with enough of a fire. So he was a radical. They killed him, and they brought him to Nashville so he could have a Kfuras Yisrael, because Isaac Leeser, a famous rabbi, I don't want to say Rav, he didn't have smicha, famous orator, pastoral care rabbi from Philadelphia, started this community. But I said, who's this guy Deerfield? So I did a little bit of research. It doesn't take long with the tools we have today. And it turns out he came from Poland to Toronto. And he lived in Toronto from 1860 to 1868. And then moved to Nashville, because how could you raise a frum family in Toronto? You have to go to Nashville. That was 1860 in North America. It's a long-winded answer. Filibustering, because I don't really know a lot of Rabbanim of Canada.
Well, I figured he moved to Nashville because how could he raise a Jewish family without Nash? So Nashville is heaven for a Jewish child.
I want you to know something. You know, I'm making a joke, but it happens to be, and I'm uniquely qualified to testify about this one matter. I remember I lived in Buffalo, so people would come all the time for shabbos. They would come for shabbos, they would eat by us, and you'd get to know a lot of people. And only one time did someone ask me this question, Bepem Mole. A guy from Deal, New Jersey says to me, he came to our house and he leaves. I'm walking back to the hotel. And he says to me, at that time we had 4 kids, now we have 5. So he said, how do you raise, I had 4 daughters at the time. He said, how do you raise 4 daughters in Buffalo? I mean, isn't it irresponsible as a frum Shemer Shabbos, a Ben Torah, to raise children here? And I turned to him and I said, the kash is on me. How do you raise 4 frum girls in Deal with the kinna and the taiva and the kavod? I mean, the tripod of temptation in this world. I don't have that here. There's no kinna in a small town. There's no taiva in a small town. Believe me, there's no kavod. You don't move to Buffalo for kavod. And Baruch Hashem, I mean, Kanai Nahara, my children, when we moved to Queens, we were actually we didn't know. We thought the chinuch was very good. Believe it or not, there were 3 frum day schools in Buffalo when we came. There were 6 families and 3 day schools. No, but there really were 3 day schools. By the time we left, there were 2, and they've expanded, and they're doing very well. And we thought our kids were getting a good chinuch. We didn't know for sure. How do you know? And when we moved to Queens, my eldest, which is really why we had to leave, she was going into high school. So Shevach High School, which is the Beis Yaakov here, which I have the covet of teaching halacha in 12th grade. She took the entrance exam, and me and my wife were sitting in the car. We were schwitzing. We were so nervous. You know, are we in La La Land? Is it chalemus? Did she have a good education? And it turns out she had a wonderful education. They say from Reb Shmuel, who has a Maser from Rabbi Yaakov, that if you're involved in chinuch, you're involved in Arbatzas Torah, your children won't be affected. I don't think anymore that's so true. I think Reb Shmuel even says that. That's not so true anymore. But we were very fortunate, mostly because I have a good Rebbitzin, but we were very lucky. So I made a joke about Nashville. It happens to be a small town, has a lot of milas.
Wow. But Klach Hayad, I had a kasha,
okay.
And Klach Hayad, you answered my kasha. I had a kasha because Klach Hayad, you're mentioning that you're probably responsible for unemployment in America because you have so many jobs. You're the Menayel in Tells, you teach halacha in Shevach High School, you're Rav, you're Balmachshir, you're a writer, it's Lo Yomik, you're super. But then when you told me you have a daughter who just came home from seminary, everything made sense.
Oh, there you go. That's why. So first of all, I'm not involved in hashkachas anymore. Yeah, that's all I'll say about that. Hashkachas are yeah. In any event, but that's how much you need to survive in New York.
I'd like to ask you a question. You brought up about the protests in America.
Right.
As a Rav who started off in Toronto and you grew up in Toronto, you've probably noticed, we noticed that there's a very difference of approach that Canadians have towards governments when there are things we don't like versus Americans when there's things in the government that they don't like. Buffalo is somewhere in the middle. They're a small town, but they still probably have the feistiness of an American. How do you see the difference, and can you compare and contrast the two and the advantages of each method?
Someone sent me a message on my phone last week, which was gewaldic. It was such a perfect message. He said, this is what our Rebbeim were talking about when we were growing up, that said, Baruch Hashem, Goyim have sports, because they could give all their energies to sport. This is what happens when they don't have sports. You know, we're seeing it in America. They don't have sports. They have nowhere to give their energy. Nebuch, they're running through the streets, burning down buildings. I don't know what it is about Canada. It's a good kasha. I don't have an answer. I'm an American citizen, Aga. I was born in New York. I don't remember it. I'm told by my parents. I lived my first 3 years in Flatbush. I don't know Pshat. It's bizarre, but I think everything in America comes to Canada in about 10 years. Styles and glasses and cars. Give it 5-10 years, Nebuch, you're going to have the same problem there. Don't think you're so chashuv. It's going to come to you. I don't know Pshat. I mean, I think Canada, you have to remember that Canada, 80% of their population, if I'm not mistaken, lives within 100 miles from the American border. So there is a magnetic pull to the United States. But you're 25 million people? You are a much smaller group. It's very hard to protest. You're much more coalesced. I would venture to say, I mean, when you go to Canada, when I was in Kasher, so I would travel a lot, wherever you go in Canada, every gas station looks exactly the same. You have Humpty Dumpty potato chips. Every gas station sold the exact same things. Anybody who drives in the United States knows any gas station you go to, you're not even going to see one of the same products. Maybe Coca-Cola and a Chabad house, but that's about it. From all of the United States, there's nothing attaching us other than our Constitution. Efsher, I don't have an answer. I'm allowed to say tzarachiyin. I don't know, but I would tell you, Yossi, don't be confident that it's not coming to you.
I was actually talking about something a little different. That you highlighted another thing that I didn't think of. But what I'm talking about is in New York, the community is fighting tooth and nail to get their camps open. They're suing the government to get their shuls open. They seem to be, the Jewish community themselves seem to be much more assertive in demanding what they want for the community more than we're here in Canada.
I see. That's interesting. Listen, Rabbi Lowy's on the line. I don't want to overstep. In the United States, Agudah, meaning the Agudah Yisrael of America, has a very strong relationship, which I'm sure they have in Canada too, but their base is in New York. So New York State and the Agudah are really, I don't want to say simpatico, but there's a lot of relationship there. So I think it's much easier. I think by our last prime minister, what was his name, Yossi?
Stephen Harper.
Stephen Harper, we had a relationship. It was much easier to get things done. With this Yaakov you have as prime minister now, who are you going to speak to? I think that has a lot to do with it, I would guess. Because I know Agudah just won a very big lawsuit. I don't know if anybody knows this. Just a few days ago, trying to convince, azah chutzpah, that in New York State, they allowed protesting, but not shuls. You could protest, 50,000 people could protest for transgender rights and Black Lives Matters, but Khalila, you could make a levaya for an Adam Chashuv. I mean, it was really a chutzpah, and it went against one of the amendments of the Constitution of a government not favoring a religion, and that's what it seems that they did, and it seems that the government lost. So, I think there's two answers then. The Agudah and the New York government, meaning, I don't mean the Agudah the shul, I mean the Agudah the organization, are somewhat close, number one. Number two is Canada doesn't have a constitution. I'm not sure exactly what they go by. It's probably a natural law, I would imagine, case law, precedent, stare decisis. Maybe there are lawyers in the audience, I don't know. So I think in America, it's a little bit simpler, but that's just a guess. I should have just said I don't know. But for regular achas, that's what I would say.
We know that you recently also suffered from COVID.
Yeah.
So we want to hear a little bit how you got through it and how much better it feels to be past it.
It feels fantastic to be past it because I don't have the pachad. I'll tell you, it's a pelo. My first Amen Yehishmei Rabbah back at shul was very emotional. It took me, I told my wife, I think I even mentioned this in Ami, it took me 3 Amen Yehishmei Rabbahs to get back to normal, to space out, to think about other matters. There are other people in my shul who are taka very nervous. And making decisions for a shul when you yourself went through it and you don't have that fear, is you have to, as a Rav, you have to think, I can't be selfish. But I had it pretty bad. I had it for a month. I was in bed for 3.5 weeks at 102, 103 fever for most of it. The only reason I didn't go to the hospital is because, in a hospital, unfortunately, especially in New York during COVID, it would have been a disaster. I was very lucky. My wife, I don't know if I have it here. The fellow who found that cure for the medication that a lot of people are talking about, that Trump supported, and then they said,
doctor from Monroe.
That's right. He actually is from Buffalo. I have in my office, it was so bizarre, my wife, Nechama Ni11, now Taub, she found his number and she called him, and she came to me while I was sick, and I was really delirious. It was only when I got better that I realized I know the fellow, and I have his autobiography, how he came from Russia to America to Buffalo. He became frum through Rabbi Greenberg, who was Chabad Rav in Buffalo. It all came full circle. But the Olam should know, if there's anybody who's young, young is relative. We all think we're young. If anybody who's even under 50, between 30 and 50, especially if you don't have type O blood, it's horrendous. It was very, very scary. It was hit and miss for a long time. Baruch Hashem, with the help of my wife and my family, my daughter came back from seminary. I didn't see her for a month. She came back, I was in bed, and it was a month later, the week of Pesach, that I finally saw her. That's how sick I was. It was gefährlich. There was a Vad HaRabbanim meeting here in Queens after I was better, and one of the Rabbanim got up. This is 2 months ago, and he said we have to reopen shuls. This is not a halacha shir. I'm just telling you what I said, and could be I was wrong, but I'm just being, it's an honest interview. Could be it was a toast on my part. There was no sichzo. I wasn't arguing with him, but he got up and he said we have to open the shuls. Now, 2 months ago, that was very premature. So I said, Farvas, well, why have to open the shuls now? It seems like a risk. So he said, he's a paisik for Hatzalah, and he brought a chuvas for Kiva Eger and the Magen Avram and Shinchav Ches and Hilchos Shabbos, that this doesn't reach the level of Safek Pekuach Nefesh. So I said, I don't know. I don't know if there's a reach the level of Safek Pekuach Nefesh, but this is not a question of an Issa D'Oraisa. Meaning, if we have to get into a car on Shabbos to drive 6 feet away, okay, you could bring in that Rabbi Kiva Eger and say this is not Safek Pekuach Nefesh. This is a shayla of Tefillah B'tzibur. And I asked the Rabbanim in the room, raise your hand if you missed Tefillah B'tzibur before COVID, 6 months before COVID. You tell me no one here missed Tefillah B'tzibur. You need it to reach a level of Pekuach Nefesh. But that was my emotions talking, because I just got better. It happened to be that it was taka premature to open the shuls. And it's still a fight now. It's a big, I don't know, in Toronto, Yosy, are they open?
Most of the shuls are open with restrictions.
Same here. How long ago? 2 weeks ago you opened? 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, about 3 weeks ago they opened.
Same here. And we'll see. But this was 2 months ago. It was taka premature.
You mentioned something about type O blood. What does type O blood have to do with COVID?
So you know what? I'm just repeating verbatim from my wife. My wife, while I was sick, was Ma'asedra on the whole sugya. And she spoke to so many infectious disease specialists. And I don't know if she's on now, but if she could private message me if she is on here, because I don't make a fool out of myself in my amaratzis. But basically, what seems to be from all studies is those with type O blood are the most protected. So my wife, Lamashal, after I got better, I went to see if I was protected, if I had antibodies. My antibodies were skyrocketing. My wife, who I don't mean to be, I'll just be frank with you, she had to change my sheets every night because I was sweating, and she had no antibodies, and she had nothing. And it seems that those with type O blood are greatly protected. And this is not, these aren't just rumors. This is published in peer-reviewed journals. You could speak to a doctor. If there's a doctor online, you could correct me or confirm this. So if you know the type of blood you have, it's kedai to know. It's very telling for protection. You don't want to talk to me about COVID. I'm not a medical.
You're Rabbi Reich with COVID, so would it be Nagea?
The Shilas. I'm sure Rabbi Lowy could give 10 drushes just on the Gishmakish Shilas. Like someone asked me, the SHul Chronicles says that you have to be able to hear your voice when you daven, when you say Shemana Esra, and when you say brachas. But when you're wearing a mask, you can't hear it. It's a very similar Shilah to people who are deaf. Someone else asked me, our shul, a lot of young Israels did this. More modernish shuls did this. We had virtual minyanim. So when we didn't have shul, we all daven zusammen online. Now, it's garnished mit nicht. What are you doing? It's not a minyan. There's no kaddish. So what's the maila? Happened to be, there is a shtickle of a maila. Or Scheinberg used to daven vasikin that way. But there are so many interesting shaylas with laning and kriyas HaTorah and haftarah. And Baruch Hashem, my shul, they asked a lot of Geshmak shaylas. So for that, it was a lot of fun. COVID. I mean, it was very interesting shaylas.
I just want to finish with one big shayla that we're struggling with in Toronto, and it needs a beer. I think the whole world is struggling to get a pshitus to the shayla. We're not asking about if you have to make a parshias. Those are all important shaylas for Rabbanim. But the most important shayla to us is, are we mechuyev to be mashlim all of the kadeshim that we missed, and all the lachaims and the tikkens that we missed? Is there a chiv to make up all of those?
I mean, I'm not going to answer that shayla. At tikkun lachayim yartzeit, there's not even a real maimer chazal that discusses yartzeit. There's one maimer chazal that is mashma. You know, Toronto had a great ilui and Nizin Yonim Smaches, who just moved to Lakewood, Rabbi Aaron Levine. I think he down by the Agudah. No? Down by the Agudah? Maybe, Ken Sign? I don't know.
He down by
Sure.
Rabbi Aaron Levine, when it comes to Yonah yard sites and Kaddish, is he's unbelievable. I call him at least, I remember once, I have a chaver who's more modern. He learns in Harvard now. And he wrote a blog making fun. Rabbi Aaron Levine came out with a sefer called Kol B'Li Yard Site, 2 volumes, encyclopedia on yard site. And he was making fun on his blog from Harvard about the Kol B'Li Yard Site. And I wrote to him, I said, what are you talking about? There's no Inyan, there's no sugya that a Rav gets asked more shilas than these in Yonim, like you're asking about miskadeshim. I don't know, miskadeshim.
No, I didn't mean the kaddish, I mean the kiddush.
Oh, the kiddush. the Sifrei Kabbalah say you have 3 days before and 3 days after. That's all I know. In my shul, the Shabbos grada.
No, the trial was mainly, could we go after all the people who would have normally given kiddush? Could we want for them to be mashlim the kiddush?
I was answering you seriously. Oh yeah, Shem Yerachem. Yes, 20 bourbons, 30 scotches, 10 rye, and a lot of herring.
That's like,
You know, I just, by the way, Yosy, you know, we have a problem in our shul because in New York, a lot of people are away for the summer. So we're looking for Balei Kriya. So I actually said that because people can't sponsor Kiddushim now and Shalashudas, they should use that money instead to sponsor Balei Kriya. It should be an aliyah for the Neshama. But throughout the COVID crisis, Kemat, every Erev Shabbos, a balabas dropped some schnapps, some kichel, and some herring by my front door to do a dikun. I didn't eat the herring, but I drank the schnapps.
I know the LCBO is suffering terrible because we don't give kiddush anymore in the Agudah.
The Frum community supports the LCBO very well. You still have the LCBO in Canada? You're not allowed to have, people can't sell drinks privately? Oh yeah, Shem Yerachim. You know, the new thing now is hashgachas on scotches and rye. Have you seen that in Canada? Does the COR give hashgachas now to schnapps?
I don't know. I just asked the Rav. Whatever the Rav says, we do.
It's become, I'll tell you a story. I know you probably have to go. When I was in Buffalo, so I get a call from a farm. And the BVK, we could always use extra money. So a farm calls us up. They grow tomatoes. And they said, we want to get a hashgacha. I said, but you grow tomatoes. I mean, what do you want a hashgacha for? So he said, but you don't understand. The way it works in supermarkets is if you're organic, they have a check. So if you're organic and if you're kosher and if you're whatever, hydroponic, which is a whole shayla for what bracha to make on it. But every check is a greater chance you get into Wegmans and Tops and Publix and whatever.
I know.
So I spoke to my advisor, which is my wife, and I said, what should I do? And she said, if you start giving hashgachas on tomatoes, that in 10 years from now, if people don't see hashgacha on tomatoes, they're not gonna. It's gonna the chad gadget is gonna be no. The OU is gonna start giving hashgachas on tomatoes. Everybody else is gonna give hashgacha on tomatoes. But in America, that's where we're holding now. In most shuls, though, right now, at least in Queens, they only accept most shuls only accept the whiskey that's been approved by hashgacha, not simply because of Pesach issues, Chamachav Pesach issues, Stam hashgacha issues. That's why I'm asking you if the COR is now giving hashgacha. Hi, Baruch Hashem, not.
I want to thank Rabbi Taub very much for coming on, and at this point, the Rav always gives a bracha to the guest for coming on. So I want to give it over to the Rav.
Oh, the Rav.
Moshe, remembering you as a young boy when you were growing up, you still have the same talent, Baruch Hashem, and the same chachma, and Baruch Hashem, we're very close to your families, and you really Mahana Darling. We could have had you for another hour. You really should be zeicha. Your daughter should find a shirchis. You should have panosa. You should be able to state and write svarim and write more divrei Torah and more articles. And together with your wife and your whole family, your father and your in-laws and the whole family should see nachas. And together we should see only bracha and simcha and panosa and kol tov by everyone. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Amen.
I wanted to say that we miss Toronto very much. Kol tov, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being on. We really enjoyed it.
Abiloi, it was kedai to come on just to hear you. Bamis.
Thank you. Regards.
Kol tov.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Taub.
After Anta Mincha, Kol tov.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going to break because Rabbi Finkel is about to start his shir. So whoever wants to listen to the shir, quietly, please stay. And the rest of us, we can go daven mincha ma'ariv. Shkoyach habayis and have a good evening.
Hi, Rabbi Taub. I heard the interview was great. I saw snippets of it. I was in and out. I had to host here. But I just wanted to share personally, even though it's not publicly, that thank you for all the times that I stopped in Buffalo to be able to daven. I also want to thank you that for the articles that you write. And what I would have said it, I was on the show and I'm going to tell it to you now, is that I start the magazine from the end. Because I can't go through the ads on Shabbos, just pasnished. A, I can't afford them, and B, to look at slices of meat early in the morning is kind of nauseating. So I started from the end. Streets of Life is there, but I usually skip it. I want to go to the lowest common denominator, which is Rabbi Moshe Taub. Once I understand that my wife hasn't written in any letters for this week, I'm okay, and I go through it. Then I have to skip over your SHul Chronicles because it's too cerebral. I'll go to Streets of Life, and then maybe
Somebody muted Akiva.
I think Akiva muted himself. I'm trying to unmute him, but it doesn't go.